If you ask people around the world what the most terrifying weapon humanity has ever created is, most of them will think of the same thing: the nuclear bomb. In a single blinding flash, a nuclear weapon can release more energy than all the explosives used in some entire wars. It can flatten a city, ignite firestorms, and leave radiation behind for years. It feels like something that should belong in science fiction, not in real history. And yet, despite how terrible these weapons are, they have only been used in war twice, at the very end of the Second World War. After that, countries did not stop. They built more of them. They tested bigger and more powerful designs. They developed missiles that could cross continents in minutes. They placed warheads on submarines under the ocean and in silos buried deep underground. They trained soldiers, wrote plans, created command systems. And still, decade after decade, no one has dared to press the button in an actual war. Nations threaten, posture, and talk tough. But in the moments that truly matter, they stop short of using nuclear weapons. To understand why these weapons exist but are not used, you have to understand nuclear deterrence. It is a strange idea, almost like a dark paradox. The best way to prevent nuclear war is for everyone to be so afraid of the consequences that no one starts one. Nuclear weapons were born from science, but the way we live with them is shaped by psychology, game theory, fear, and survival. When nuclear weapons were first created, many people thought of them as simply super bombs. The early designs were based on nuclear fission, where the nucleus of an atom is split into smaller parts, releasing enormous energy. This energy can be turned into a blast wave, heat, and radiation. The first bombs were crude by today's standards, but even those were enough to erase entire city centers in moments. The shock of seeing entire cities destroyed made it clear that these were not just bigger artillery shells. Conventional weapons can destroy buildings, bridges, and armies. Nuclear weapons can damage or destroy entire societies. They do not just change the battlefield, they change the entire picture of what war means. Once other countries began to develop their own nuclear weapons, especially during the Cold War, the situation changed again. Now, it was not just one country with a terrible weapon. It was two superpowers facing each other, both able to cause unbelievable damage. The key realization slowly emerged: if one side used nuclear weapons in a full-scale way, the other side would respond, and both would be destroyed. There would be no real winner. This idea was summed up in a phrase that sounds like a dark joke, but was meant completely seriously: mutually assured destruction. The idea of mutually assured destruction is simple and terrifying. If country A launches a large nuclear attack on country B will still have enough surviving nuclear weapons to strike back and destroy country A. Both countries end up devastated. Knowing this, neither A nor B has any rational reason to start such a war. Nuclear deterrence grows out of that logic. These weapons are so destructive that they become almost useless for normal military purposes. Instead, they turn into tools for preventing certain actions. Just having them changes how everyone behaves. A country does not gain by using them. It gains by convincing others that it could and would use them if absolutely necessary, which makes others careful not to cross certain lines. For deterrence to work, three things have to be true. First, a country must genuinely have enough nuclear weapons to cause unacceptable damage. If you only had one small nuclear device and your rival had hundreds, they might think they can destroy yours before you can respond. That would weaken deterrence. Second, even more important, your weapons must be survivable. That means that even if your enemy attacks you first, they cannot destroy all of your nuclear forces. Some must survive to strike back. This is called second strike capability. Nations build this capability by spreading their weapons across many missile silos, on mobile launchers, and especially on submarines hidden under the ocean. Submarines carrying nuclear missiles can disappear into deep water for months, and they are extremely hard to find. As long as submarines or other hidden forces exist, no enemy can be certain they can wipe out all nuclear weapons in a surprise attack. The third ingredient is credibility. It is not enough to have weapons and second strike capability. Others must believe there are real circumstances where you would use them. That does not mean you want to start a war. It means that if your cities were hit first, they must believe you would respond, even knowing it would lead to mutual destruction. That belief stops them from attacking in the first place. This is where strategy, communication, and psychology come together. Leaders declare doctrines that lay out under what conditions they might use nuclear weapons. Militaries run exercises to show that their procedures and command systems are real, not imaginary. Weapons are deployed in visible ways. Messages are sent through speeches, diplomatic channels, and behaviors. All of this builds a picture in the minds of rivals. The picture they want their rivals to have is not, "We are crazy and eager to start a nuclear war," but "We are sane. But if you try to destroy us, you will fail, and you will be destroyed too." That quiet threat at the back of everyone's mind is deterrence. Game theory, the mathematical study of strategic decision-making, helps explain why this situation is stable in a very dark way. Picture two rival leaders, each with nuclear weapons. In a crisis, each has a choice to launch or not launch. If neither launches, both survive. If they both launch, both are likely destroyed. If one launches and the other does not, the first might believe they can win. But because of second strike capability, the second can almost always respond. That means trying to launch a huge surprise attack is incredibly dangerous. One mistake in calculation, one warhead that survives underground or on a submarine, and you face huge retaliation. Game theorists compare this to a game of chicken where both drivers are heading at each other at high speed. With nuclear weapons, each car is full of explosives. The only truly rational move for both is to swerve away before collision. And so long as both sides understand this, they do not choose to crash. They avoid direct nuclear conflict, even if they fight in other ways. The fact that nuclear weapons have not been used in war since the 1940s does not mean deterrence is perfect or risk-free. There have been multiple close calls when the system almost failed. Machines sent false alarms. Early warning radars and satellites sometimes misinterpreted strange signals. Sunlight reflecting off clouds, missile tests, technical glitches. In those moments, some officers and leaders saw warning screens telling them missiles might be inbound. Procedures said to prepare for response, but human beings hesitated. They double-checked. They chose not to launch immediately. That human hesitation was not just luck. It was shaped by the knowledge of what nuclear war would mean. If you truly believe pressing a button might destroy your own country, you will be extremely careful.
When we look at the data, the actual risk
People in
profile is
positions of
quite low,
responsibility
represented by this
had
green check.
internalized the same lesson their weapons were designed to teach their enemies. Nuclear war would be the end of everything they were supposed to defend. You might ask, if nuclear weapons are so dangerous that no one wants to use them, why do countries keep them instead of relying only on conventional armies? One answer is that nuclear weapons have become the ultimate "do not invade me" sign. For a state that feels threatened, especially by larger and stronger neighbors, nuclear weapons act as a shield. It is expensive to build and maintain a huge army capable of fighting conventional wars against great powers. It might be cheaper and more effective to maintain a smaller army and a nuclear deterrent. If a rival knows you have nuclear weapons and second strike capability, they must assume that any attempt to totally defeat or occupy you could trigger nuclear response. That possibility alone may keep them from trying. Another answer is status. In global politics, nuclear weapons are tied to power and prestige. States with nuclear arsenals often have a different level of influence. They sit in certain councils, take part in strategic talks, and are treated as major players. Of course, nuclear weapons are not the only source of power. Economic strength, technology, geography, and alliances all matter too. But nuclear deterrence adds a special kind of respect and caution. Additionally, these weapons are extremely hard to use in a limited, controlled way. Conventional weapons can be used in small operations or large campaigns. Nuclear weapons cross a line. Even a small nuclear detonation would shock the entire world. No one can be sure how others would respond psychologically, militarily, or politically. A supposedly limited use could cause panic, miscalculation, escalation, and spark a much larger exchange. That uncertainty makes leaders think twice, 3 times, 100 times before even considering use. In practice, they mostly do not consider it at all, except in extreme last resort scenarios. Some people like to imagine that a country might launch a perfect surprise strike, destroying all of an enemy's nuclear arsenal before it can respond. In theory, this would break deterrence and let one side win a nuclear war. In reality, this is close to impossible. You would need perfect information about where all of the enemy's weapons are. You would need your missiles and bombs to arrive exactly on target. You would need to destroy hardened silos, mobile launchers that can move around, and submarines hiding in vast oceans. Even if you thought you could destroy 95% of the enemy's weapons, the remaining 5% might still be enough to destroy your largest cities. No rational leader wants to gamble their entire society on the hope that no hidden submarine or unknown launcher is left. That is why strategies are built around assured retaliation rather than first strike victory. Because miscalculation is so dangerous, communication becomes critical. Nuclear powers set up direct communication lines between governments and command centers. These hotlines allow leaders to clarify intentions quickly, especially during crises. If one side moves nuclear-capable forces, they might signal that it is a routine rotation, not preparation for attack. They might invite inspections, sign treaties, or share data to prove certain limitations. None of this means rivals suddenly trust each other as friends. It means they recognize that misunderstandings in a nuclear world can be fatal. Clear signaling, transparency in some areas, and crisis communication help keep deterrence stable. On top of the strategic logic, there is also a heavy moral layer. The images of destroyed cities, of people suffering from burns and radiation, and of the long-term environmental damage are part of our global memory. Leaders know that ordering a nuclear strike would not only destroy physical targets, it would leave a stain on their own legacy forever. Even if they talked in harsh terms before, when facing the reality of mass destruction, the moral cost becomes enormous. This moral weight reinforces the strategic logic. Even if using nuclear weapons might bring some short-term advantage in a local sense, the long-term judgment from history, from their own people, and from the world would likely be harsh. So the barrier to use becomes not only rational, but also ethical. Despite all of this, countries that possess nuclear weapons do not simply sit still. Over time, they have negotiated agreements to reduce risks. These arms control agreements have tried to limit the number of warheads, cap the number of delivery systems, ban certain destabilizing technologies, and improve verification and transparency. It is interesting that rivals who might distrust each other deeply still manage to sit at the same table and agree on rules in this one area. The reason is simple. They may disagree about many things, but they share a common interest in not dying together in a nuclear fire. Arms control does not eliminate nuclear weapons, but it can make the deterrence environment less dangerous by reducing the chance of accidents or misjudged arms races. If nuclear weapons are so risky, why not just get rid of them entirely? This question has no easy answer. Completely disarming would require huge amounts of trust. Each country would need confidence that others are not secretly hiding some weapons. Verification would have to be incredibly thorough. Even if they achieved this, some states would fear that future political changes, new alliances, or new threats might leave them vulnerable without a deterrent. For some, nuclear weapons feel like a permanent insurance policy. Giving up that policy in a world that still has conflict and competition feels frightening. Status and domestic politics also play a role. Leaders do not want to be seen as weak. For now, Most nuclear states support ideas about reducing risks, avoiding proliferation, and maybe cutting stockpiles. But almost none are willing to give up the last warhead that guarantees their deterrent. So the world lives with the paradox: instead of zero nuclear weapons, it tries to manage a world with some nuclear weapons as safely as possible. In the 21st century, deterrence is more complicated. There are more nuclear-armed states. Some face each other in tense regional rivalries. New technologies like cyber attacks, advanced conventional weapons, and anti-satellite systems create new kinds of risk. But the core logic of deterrence remains the same. Each nuclear state wants to make sure no one can attack it with nuclear weapons without suffering terrible retaliation. Each knows that a full-scale nuclear war would be a disaster for everyone involved. In that shared understanding lies the reason why these weapons exist, but stay unused. Nuclear weapons have become power that limits itself. They give a state tremendous ability to prevent certain things from happening, but very little ability to gain anything positive by actually firing them. They are weapons of denial, not tools of conquest. They are kept in silos, on submarines, and in storage as silent reminders of what could happen if deterrence ever breaks down. Their most important role is not in launching, but in constantly whispering into the ears of leaders on all sides, if you start this, you will not survive it either. For ordinary people, nuclear deterrence can feel distant. It plays out in meetings we will never see, in documents full of technical language, and in military bases hidden behind fences. But its influence is always present in the background. It shapes which conflicts remain limited and which are avoided entirely. It shapes how countries talk, how they form alliances, and how cautious they are when their forces get close to each other. Understanding this does not mean approving of nuclear weapons or thinking they are safe. It means recognizing why, since their invention, they have become weapons that are always being prepared and never used. It means seeing that fear, in this one case, has become a strange kind of guardian. The fear of mutual destruction keeps hands off the launch keys, keeps missiles in their silos, and keeps submarines hidden but silent. As long as leaders everywhere remember that a nuclear war has no real winners, only different versions of total loss, the logic of deterrence will continue to hold them back from crossing the final line.